Morehouse. I chose Morehouse because I took a tour at Morehouse my sophomore year in high school. And just from walking around those sacred and hallowed grounds of that campus and just listening to the alum and the contributions in which they've made in this world, um, and just being able to sit in and just to look at the pictures of all the faces of people who have contributed to the school and so forth. Right then and there, I knew I was going to Morehouse. I just knew.
Hmm.
And so when it came time to apply, I applied. I didn't know how much the school cost. I never thought about how much the school cost.
Right.
And so I just knew I was going to go to Morehouse.
Hello, everyone. This is Tim Brown, author of the book, Boys Won't Be Boys, Empowering Boys Live Uncommon in a Common World. And I am blessed to have with me today a truly uncommon young man, Brother Nathan Harris. We met back at Northland High School. Nathan was a student there, and when the book first came out, I was doing a panel discussion, community roundtable about the book. And I asked Coach Tucson, hey, Coach, I know y'all got somebody here that can come video and tape this thing. And sure enough, there was Nathan ready to go. I still remember that day. And I'm just so proud of all these things that you've been able to accomplish. So welcome to the show, Nathan. Welcome to the show, Nate.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I know it's going to be a rich conversation. Just for the audience, Nathan is a graduate of Northern High School. Actually, he's currently a Ph.D. student in engineering education at The Ohio State University. So, boy, what an awesome thing that is for a young African-American male to achieve that goal. So I want to jump right in as we talk about mentoring and growing up. And I know you grew up in the church, and both of us are men of faith. What were some of those positive male role models in your life growing up in church?
Got it. So, right off the bat, my pastor, the Dr. Charles Edward Booth, I look at him as one of my father figures in life. And the reason why he was such a role model to me is because when you grow up, I'm a person that likes to observe, and I'm real quiet, especially in new territories and stuff like that. But he was always a presence in which I always observed, from how he walked into the sanctuary to him, coming up to little old me saying, "Never button the last button on your suit," and and just how he greeted and spoke with people when it comes with love and just respect. He had a huge influence in me growing up and even until this day. And so, by having that, of a person of his caliber, in my life, has really, it shaped how I viewed church and how I, went about growing my faith and so forth. And when it comes to the strength and the amount of time that you put in studying the Word of God and finding the purpose and the reason why you're studying that Word, it all started because of an influence of a man like him.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you learned some great life lessons from him and just from the church, just being around men in church as well. And we know you're a great academic student. What was your driving force to do so well in school? I know that started at a young age. What was that driving force?
I think in a lot of my scholarship essays, I'll put something along the lines of, I was always curious about pushing that big red button that said, "Do not push." I always wanted to know, why is it that you can't push this button? And so I think, the reason why I've been able to achieve the different, academic, I guess results I've had so far is because of the drive and the ability to be a lifelong learner, which I think is, far more important than just, you know, learning just because you need to fill out a couple check boxes and so forth in order to get to the next stage, but how is it that you can take the different lessons which are being taught in and outside of the classroom, and apply them to different obstacles or situations that you'll come across with in life? And how is it that you're asking questions to different students, to teachers, to family members, and so forth? And one thing that anybody knows about me, especially my family, is that I have an old spirit. They always say I have an old spirit. And so,
Right.
I was very mature, even when I was younger, sitting at the grown-ups table and being able to ask, a question that will puzzle them. Like, what is this 9-year-old asking this type of question? Like, where are you getting this from? But it's because of that drive to be a lifelong learner.
Mm-hmm. You just spoke briefly about your family. Let's talk about your family a little bit and the impact that they've had on your life thus far.
Oh yeah. I think you can see a little bit of each of my family members in me. And one thing that Dr. Booth shared with me is that people, the people who are in your lives are like streams, and then I would add on that they contribute to the tributary of your existence. So you should be able to see a little bit of everybody and who you are. And sometimes you got to cut some of those streams off, and some you just got to let them flow. And so when it comes to my family, when it comes to my great grandfather and both my grandfathers, super strong men, not just, physical, but mental and spiritual. My great grandfather, Roy Jefferson, he was, there's a reason why my great grandma, Bertha Jefferson, referred to him as a sunshine man, is because he loved sunshine. He loved being outside. Grew up in South Carolina, picking cotton, even though he doesn't like talking about it. But, he loves gardening and loves the game of baseball. And so, when it comes to my, me going and having a garden now myself is because I was outside with him gardening. Now I was outside with my grandpa and him fishing. So, I like fishing. And, my grandfather, it feels like anywhere we might go in Columbus, we always gonna find somebody that knows Bruce. Somebody's always gonna know Bruce, and he's gonna be hollering out, saying, "Hey, how you doing?" Something like that. And so just the importance of developing relationships, with different people. And, when it comes to love and peace and just, that lifelong learning that I talked about earlier, you can see that in my grandmother and my mother, who are both educators. And then, sense of humor and being able to chillax, to chill. I definitely get that from my aunts and uncles. So,
Right, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were a top student in Northland High School. In your senior year, you were blessed to receive the Gates Millennium Scholarship. What was that? Can you tell us what that process was to receive that scholarship and the benefits of it?
Yeah. So I'm a big big proponent of saying, to continue to speak life and to speak things that you want into existence. And so, it was my freshman year when I watched a woman now who's a woman, Samaya Abdullahi. She was the first one I ever saw who got that scholarship. So my freshman year, I said, I'm getting that scholarship.
Yeah.
And it was probably my sophomore year in which I started to write my valedictorian speech. And so then it was my junior year in which I started to write the application to fill out, starting writing those essays and stuff for that long scholarship. And so each year, I was preparing myself for what is it that I wanted. And so when it came to senior year, I wasn't rushed to try to get everything done. And so, when it comes to the scholarship, one thing that my neighbor pushed me on, who really pushed me in writing, developing, crafting my essays, is that these people want to hear a story.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is we all have a story. It just depends on how is it that we can tell this story. And, you might have not have done everything, you might have not been extremely involved in high school doing this and that like I was. But they don't know that. They don't know you. The only thing they know about you is what you put on that paper and when you press submit. So as long as you're able to convey, a meaningful story and not just looking at the question and answering it verbatim, I think that's really your best route in getting that scholarship. And the different scholars that I've met, they have, I don't want to call it more significant because I think we're all significant people, but they have way different experiences than I have. I've met people who traveled back and forth from the Mexico-California border just to go to school every day. And, they were recipients of that scholarship. And the reason why they talked about why they traveled back and forth and the hardships that, their family had to endure going back home and stuff like that. And then, you find people who have, lost both their parents, their freshman or, junior year in high school and having to live through that. And so it's just about telling that story that will convey to those who are reviewing your scholarship essays, if it's Gates or any other scholarship that you might apply for, is what those people want to hear. And so, just view your life as significant and write about it. Write about it. Would you want to read your own essay over and over again? If you don't want to read your own essay over and over again, that means it ain't a good essay.
That's good stuff. So with that scholarship, you're able to choose any school. You can attend any school in the country. Why did you choose to attend Morehouse HBCU school? And what does it mean to be now being a Morehouse graduate? What does it mean to be a Morehouse man?
Well, I chose Morehouse because I guess I can only say this after the fact, but it's the greatest school in the whole wide world. And the reason why I can say that is because, when I went down to Morehouse, I went down at let me first start off with why I chose Morehouse. I chose Morehouse because I took a tour at Morehouse my sophomore year in high school. And just from walking around those sacred and hallowed grounds of that campus and just listening to the alum and, the contributions in which they've made in this world, and just being able to sit in and just to look at the pictures of all the faces of people who have contributed to the school and so forth. Right then and there, I knew I was going to Morehouse. I just knew. And so when it came time to apply, I applied. I didn't know how much the school costs. I never thought about how much the school costs.
Right.
And so I just knew I was going to go to Morehouse. And so when going down to Morehouse, I went down there with the mentality of, I graduated from Northland, from the greatest city in the whole wide country, and got a 4.5 GPA. I got this Gates Millennium Scholarship. I was valedictorian. I was drum major. List of accolades can just go on. And then you go to Morehouse and you see people that got the same resume, if not more, than you. And so, right off then, you have two choices. You can either feel like you have to compete with them, or you just allow Morehouse to work. And what Morehouse is going to teach you is that your brothers are here to help challenge and to build you up. And so I got that from day one, from being able to have, very intellectual debates, in our residence halls at 2:00 in the morning, to having debates on, when it comes to politics or race relations, or even who's the greatest football player of all time or greatest quarterback, which is ours to Tom Brady. So, you were able to have these type of discussions with your brothers, and you weren't competing against them because you all have the same goal, which is to become your best self, become a Morehouse man who will, who will live lives dedicated to leadership and service. And so, with that, I think that's all that I got from Morehouse. And really, I'm still seeing the effects of Morehouse, till this day, by the different people in which I encounter, these different, CEOs of these Fortune 500 companies. And I say, I went to Morehouse. That white guy would say, oh, I have a good friend that went to Morehouse. Mm-hmm. And he'll be able to pour everything out about that friend. And then he'll be able to look at you and say, I know you're a good person. Right. Because you're a Morehouse man. Mm-hmm. And so that brand is powerful. That brand is super powerful. Yeah. So yeah, that's the reason why.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're also blessed in college to travel abroad, to study abroad. What were some of your most memorable experiences of that traveling the world?
I spent 6 months in Cape Town, South Africa. Wow. Studying at the University of Cape Town, which at the time, I didn't realize how rigorous or how strong of an institution that was. But I tell you, I was pulled. I was pulled. I probably have never had an academic experience like that. I don't think I ever want to go back. But I had lots of, very cool experiences from, climbing mountains. Climbing mountains. Never would have thought I would have been climbing mountains, but here I am climbing all the mountains, not all the mountains, but they have a mountain series called Table Mountain, Lion's Head, and Devil's Peak. And I did all three of them. Devil's Peak was probably the worst, which is why it's called Devil's Peak. It took about 12 hours to go up and to come down. Make sure you eat before you ever go mountain climbing. But from climbing mountains and to going to ostrich, where they have ostrich farms and eating ostrich meat and eating ostrich eggs, and then riding on the back of an ostrich, what an experience. And to going on a real safari, I'm not talking about just going to the Columbus Zoo or to the wilds and seeing, the animals where they're supposed to be. No, going on a all-day safari where you're just looking, you don't know what you're gonna see. Right. And now you'll see a lion, you see an elephant that comes up right to you like this, stuff like that was phenomenal. But then I also traveled to Ghana my senior year, and Ghana and Africa were two different experiences. When I stepped off the plane in South Africa, I thought I was in the West Coast, and I thought I was in California or something, And that's why I always say that, South Africa is a beautiful country, and if you're trying to figure out where to go in Africa, start out in South Africa, because it's a good transition from the United States into the African continent. But Ghana, oh my goodness! When I went to Ghana, I just felt like I was home. This black everything, from the architecture to the food. Eating rice. My God, for every meal of the day, it seemed like didn't know how many ways you could prepare rice, but my kidneys learned. And the most shaking experience was going to those slave dungeons, or what they're referred to as slave castles, and stepping foot into those cellars where they held us, where they held our ancestors, for months on end before they made their passage through the door of no return, and they said goodbye to home, and just being hit with that emotion, and just being able just to hear the moans and to still see, the feces that still is on the ground after all these years, that's just still there. It can be an overwhelming experience, but I think it was a necessary experience. And, that's why I encourage people to travel. And if you have the opportunity to go abroad, to do it.
That's powerful, yeah. And all that through the value of education, all those opportunities present you. And now you're blessed with this opportunity, working on a PhD in engineering education. Why is it so important for you as a young Black man to achieve this goal, of acquiring that PhD in education engineering?
If you would have asked me this question 3 years ago, I would have said, I don't know why I'm getting this degree. I think the only reason why I want to get the degree is because, I think I'm a fifth generation Buckeye now. After going through to all those summer commencements of my grandma, my mom, and my aunts, and one thing always stood out were those scarlet robes.
Yeah.
Those robes are sharp, and so probably my first year in that program, I said, I'm only reason I'm here is because I want to wear that robe one day. And so, now that has changed. I'm just being transparent. I think transparency is good because you don't always know the reason why you're doing something, and so it wasn't until now, my fourth and final year, in which I realized that this, it's not just a degree, but it's what I'm being equipped with that's going to allow me to pursue different opportunities that will further help the community impact in which I aspire to do. It's to be able to go into spaces of the marginalized and not come in as like a savior, but to come in and to say, let's build ourselves up together. Because in the reality is when one person's struggling, we're all struggling. And, and also I'm trying to get out of this deficit mindset too, but, it's about how is it that we're building each other up so that we become our best selves? How is it that we're able to see the brilliance inside of all of us? And so, that's the reason why, I'm pursuing, this degree so that I'm able to go into, I'm already in the community, but to go in with a level of expertise and to be able to go into other places to say, all right, come on in here so that we can work together to get, this job done. And so, that's why I'm currently, pursuing that doctorate.
Yeah, you are truly a trailblazer as well. Just the fact that you're in that, you're just kind of blazing the trail. Someone blazed it for you, and now it's your turn. You're picking up the mantle and kind of keeping this thing going. And just to be encouraged, who would have thought a young kid from Columbus, Ohio, Northland High School, Columbus City Schools, is about to get a PhD in education, engineering education, I've been all over the world, but truly a trailblazer and encouragement to others. So in that last, as we wrap up, in that light is, as now you are kind of at a different stage of life as far as mentoring other young men, other young boys, what word of encouragement would you give to this generation of young men? We see all this violence on the streets and all these things going on. What word of encouragement, what word of hope can you give to young men?
I recently wrote a post in which I referenced Genesis 4:9. I am my brother's keeper. That rhetorical question that was asked. And so I would say, to young men, be your brother's keeper. Because when you're your brother's keeper, there's a sense of accountability, there's hope, there's perseverance, there's strength, and there's faith to where you want to be. And so by looking out, for your brothers, you change your narrative. You can change how you live and you approach life and the circumstances that life might throw you. because, we all go through hard times, but if you're being kept by, your brother, you'll realize that, your brother went through the same challenge. And so my brother's right here to help me get through mine. And so I would say that, you need to declare that you are your brother and your sister's keeper. So that's what I would say to our young men.
That's powerful. That's a powerful way to end this. Yeah, and just reminding us that we are brother's keepers. And I want to first off commend you for your commitment to excellence. Not just any old thing, to excellence. And I want to commend you for that, and just the example that you are setting, for others to follow. And that whole piece, I'm just looking forward to what God has in store for you, the great things that God has in store for you. And the Bible says that He'll do exceedingly and abundantly more than we can think of or imagine. I know you had your plan going in. You saw the Gates Millennium Scholarship, that was part of the deal. You saw that scarlet robe, that you'll be getting as a Ph.D. or whatnot. But you and I know that God can do exceedingly and abundantly more than we can even think or imagine. That's what He's doing in your life. And that's the word of encouragement to others. And we just have to be our brother's keepers. We have to look out for each other. So I want to thank you for your time, and just want to encourage you to continue on in your pursuit of excellence. And that's my word for you, just pursuing excellence, because you've always been about above and beyond, just excellence. We need, and if anything, we need models and men and young men who are about excellence, And I can tell if you've been brought up, I know you've been under Dr. Booth, and I know he was a man of excellence. We know that. And so I want to commend you for that. I want to encourage you to continue on in that light. And man, we're proud of you. We're definitely proud of you, man, all you're doing. So thanks, Nathan. I appreciate your time, and thanks for being on the show today.
Awesome. Thank you for the opportunity, Deacon Brown.
Yeah.